For anybody listening to the webinar as a recording, this first bit of it is just going to be me. We weren't able to get the recording start up live until about halfway through. So we'll be patching together what's here, and then later the previously live broadcasted recording with Scott Donald included will be put together in the video that gets sent out. When we're discussing what the topic was going to be, naturally it was going to be something to do with lead generation. The element that kept coming up in conversations with clients, and we just thought was something particularly important, was about scaling and how to increase the efforts and the output in the most appropriate way. There's two angles that came out to as we were making this, as around scaling with or without AI, but the fundamentals, which either direction you decide to choose or a combination of both, were the same. And what is the importance of that? Essentially, if you don't get the fundamentals right, that the extra energy and effort and time and money that you put into it might not result in the output that you want if the fundamentals aren't the same. It essentially can lead to a huge amount of waste or leakage or time put into things that don't result in revenue. We've come up with an analogy, a sports analogy, which is something that Scott and I enjoy particularly, a football analogy that relates to the use of AI or the appropriate scaling. So in a football team, AI can double the speed of your players and can triple their stamina, but without any strategy, they're going to be running around like headless chickens. And you can imagine it, you've got a World 11 football team, and they play against a much less individually talented team, but they end up losing or drawing, and they don't have quite the same performance because they don't have the same level of coherence. They haven't trained together. They don't know how the process works. Those players that have been playing together for years know exactly what to do in every situation. The World 11 doesn't necessarily know that. And it's exactly the same as this. If you triple your advertising spend or you double the amount of salespeople, are you going to end up with that same result in terms of revenue? Well, it depends if the whole process works and everybody knows what they're doing. What we're going to cover within this webinar is over 5 main areas. 1, why we need to get the fundamentals right before scaling, whether that's with or without AI. What those fundamentals are, so what a healthy sales model looks like from the start of the process the whole way through to the end being revenue, but the different elements that are included within that. Some elements of self-audit. What can we do when we're looking at our own go-to-market infrastructure? What's going on in our sales and marketing function, a look in the mirror. And then a section just on what we as 1000 Steps are doing with our AI tools. There's a huge amount of things going on in the world. We're not covering all of it, so it's just what we've found useful over these past few months and couple of years. And then the final bit is who's supposed to take charge over all of this process. Why do we need to get the fundamentals right before scaling? If you think of revenue generation through sales and through marketing as a process, the common analogy is as a sales funnel. Leads and opportunities go in at the beginning of that process. They don't all lead to revenue. As you imagine, 100 leads are generated. You don't close 100 deals. It might be a small proportion of that, 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 or 30. Everything else within that has leaked out for whatever reason. Some of those are very legitimate reasons. They're not the right profile, it's not the right time. But for others, it's just a lack of proper organization, poor execution in the sales process, a range of things that we can minimize that. And the more we can minimize it, the more of those opportunities we can convert into revenue. So understanding what's going on in that sales process is really, really important. There can be a lack of quality flow that goes into the pipeline, but also a leakage from it. And both of those can be addressed. We want to make sure that the efforts that we're about to increase when we scale, so that's maybe more salespeople, more ad spend, more tools and software, more use of AI, whatever it might be, does lead to an increased amount of output and hopefully a proportional increase in output. And so getting these fundamentals right first means that there's just less wastage and less time spent on ineffective routes and projects as we go along. Healthy sales model. What does a healthy sales model look like? Imagine our sales process or our or our funnel. It starts with the traditional sales funnel, starts with the opportunities at the beginning. Those opportunities come from some sort of source, right? Our lead source or our channel. There's a really, really broad range of these. That you've got the more common ones in emails and cold calling and marketing campaigns and events. It could truly be anything. If you meet people at football, when your son's playing football and you meet the other parents and those end up being your customers, then that is your channel. It's really broad. Obviously, there's more common ones. We need to look at that, identify where revenue has come from in the past, identify which could be scalable. Could we triple the amount of one of those? Sometimes we can't. Often we can't. You can't necessarily go to 3 times as many football practices. You can't necessarily hire 3 times the sales team. And then look to see if we want to add any new ones. There's the initial reach out. So that first message, the first time you're in touch, and the majority of people won't respond positively on that occasion. And that's where we then need to nurture. And that's the next phase of this. And the nurturing will be different types of contact, but it's ways of staying in contact with them and building that relationship of trust over time. Within there will be that request for that meeting, right? And so at some point, those that accept the meeting will then transition through to our introductory meeting. And this is, I suppose, the beginning of the official part of the sales process, that introductory meeting. Different businesses will then have different stages within their introductory discovery proposal meeting sequence. Some businesses will have multiple meetings when it's a more complex sell. Others have very few. It might just be one. For us, it's typically 3: an introductory meeting, a discovery meeting, a proposal meeting, and usually things get closed within that, but there might be some subsequent catch-ups after that before a deal gets closed. As we follow this process through, people drop out at all stages. And so when they drop out, we need to work out what we then do with them. And if they're fundamentally not the right profile, and they never will be, but we've now understood that, then it might be that there's no further action. But for others that we want to maintain a relationship with, we then need to nurture, and they loop back around, back into the nurture process, hopefully to pick them up again later. We need to be able to look at this as a whole, look to see whether it's appropriate for our goals. Are we trying to build our revenue as 100% growth, 200% growth over the next 12 months, the next 24 months? And looking at this model as a whole, is that something that we can scale? And this, I think the first phase of that is just understanding how it all flows through. Anybody that's been to any of our webinars before, seen much of our content, will be familiar with this diagram and these figures. It's come from a piece of marketing research that was done years ago, but essentially it's dividing up the market into the level of engagement that different parts of the market have with you. At the bottom end of it, it estimates there's about 60% of the market that are never going to have any interest in your company. They're never going to have a need for what you offer, and that's fine. You're never going to be able to engage these people, and we don't pay any attention to them. You can't be all things to all people. At the top end of this diagram, there's a very small number of leads, of opportunities that are active buyers at the moment. They've come to you, they've got a burning need for it, and they know that, and they're ready to purchase. And these are great, and these are the people that pass through your sales process really, really quickly, but often not enough to grow, to sustain a growing business. So what we're left with in the middle of that is a percentage of people who have a need and are ready to act, but they've not found you yet. And then those that have a need, but they're not yet ready to act. So these are the ones that need more attention. They need a decent sales process and marketing process and nurturing process, so that either they're ready now and you found them and you get to take them on that last part of the journey, or they'll be ready at some point in the next 24 months. But you need to make sure that you are front of mind. And that's done by staying in touch and building up trust through trying to provide as much value as possible, marketing, communications and content and those bits and pieces, so that when they're ready, they think of you and they come to you first. So we need to understand our channels. And there's a few questions we can ask ourselves around that. Where does our revenue come from right now? Are there particular channels that generate more of our revenue? There's likely to be. Is it one channel? Is it 2 or 3 channels? In what proportions is that revenue coming from each different channel? And is it stable? It's really important to work out and identify what risk there is. If all of your revenue is coming from something that can be cut off, the click of fingers, for example, if it all comes from LinkedIn and you get banned from LinkedIn, what are you going to do then? Who is your ICP, your ideal customer profile? Do you know exactly how to target them? Do you know the right people and the right organizations? Or actually is there quite a lot of luck involved? Because if you scale and you're increasing the amount of activity you're doing, you really want to make sure that that's focused into the right individuals. What revenue goals are we trying to reach? It's really, really important. If you're trying to double, triple, quadruple your revenue, are you able to do that with your existing channels, or do you need to include something else? Some channels you can increase in volume. If it's ad spend, then you can conceivably quadruple your ad spend. If it all comes from referrals, can you quadruple your referrals? That's going to be very, very difficult. Maybe, but I would think over a really extended period of time, right? So it really depends on the channel and whether your goal is achievable. So this is the next phase of our healthy sales model, right? The progression through our sales process. Is it healthy? We look at the first meeting to second meeting to third meeting to proposals. And we're going to talk about it a little later on, but we can talk about it now. What's the conversion rate from first meeting to second meeting, from proposal to close? Yeah, if you have 100 first meetings during the year and you have 20 second meetings, is that conversion, is that something that's appropriate to your market? 100 down to 20. It could suggest that you're talking to the wrong sort of people, that you've got your ICP is not quite right. Mm-hmm. The people you're talking to don't match your ICP. It could be that there's something going wrong in that meeting, that you're not able to take them on the journey that they need to go to identify if they're the right type of lead, but also for them to see the value of what you're able to offer. And so, it could mean different things, and it's important to identify the situation you're in to begin with. Again, your proposals, if you close 1 in 10 proposals, it suggests you're spending a lot of time on proposals that there's no need to. Again, it could be an ICP issue. It could be a pricing issue. It could be that they just don't trust you yet. They've not spent enough time with you yet. To identify these issues, I think we really need to understand where we are.
The thing that I might add to this as well, Will, is that some people are probably looking at this and going, wow, there's 3 meetings before you do a proposal. And I would argue that in some cases, yes. Uh, Oftentimes, what I see is that organizations can't wait to do their demo or their proposal. And I would suggest that one of the reasons that you see things stall in your funnel is because you're rushing to get to the proposal before you're really ready to. And Will talked about the relationship and the trust. Maybe you don't really understand their situation as well as you can in order to help them. So I think that, yeah. So you know what, and Earl, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I think it depends on the industry, but what I tend to see is that when organizations in their sales process rush to a proposal, more often than not, when I go in there, they say, yeah, stuff gets stuck in our funnel. And it's usually because they've rushed to a proposal before really building the trust, building the understanding of the customer. So their proposals tend to be more generic and they're not really impacting people. So then things sit in the funnel. So you might need 2, 3, sometimes 4 meetings to really earn that trust, develop that understanding, and earn the right to do a proposal. Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're right. You're right, Michael. It does.
So I'd love to say 100%. This depends on your market. And so this isn't saying a first, second, third proposal close is the right is the right structure, right? It depends on product and how complicated the business you're working with is. It's the theory behind understanding what your progression through the sales process is that's important, right? How successful is each stage?
And if nothing else,
Next,
think about it, right? If nothing else, think about what you're doing and if this makes sense. So have that discussion with yourself.
next slide, please, Shah. Awesome. And then in terms of leakage, right? So leakage can come there's 2 main elements, right? The volume of what's coming through and then what's leaking out of our process. So leakage can come in all sorts of different ways. These are a few ideas, lack of nurturing and lack of re-engagement, right? So you had a great meeting with someone, they're not ready, you never contact them again. That is a form of leakage and something that can be patched up, right? There's the Sorry, just go back a couple. Leakage. There's poor follow-ups, poor lead quality. That's a form of leakage that you'd expect. I mean, it's good that they're leaking out of your system, but it was also a waste of effort, right? If the lead quality is poor, right? And then ineffective sales process we've spoken about.
And I would just add, it's interesting. There's a lot of statistics from groups like Gartner and HubSpot that talks about poor follow-up as being one of the critical opportunities for organizations to get better at because part of their sales process is they don't really have a good follow-up methodology. So something as simple as that could be one of the ways that you can improve your results. Yep.
Next slide, please, Shah. Okay, so next phase of what we're talking about, our self-audit, which is a look in the mirror. Next slide, please. We start really at the top. Anybody that's familiar with Alex Hormozy will be familiar with some bits of this. But if you're looking purely at the fundamentals as a bigger view as possible, what are the must-haves? We need a way for you to be able to reach out to people, whatever that might be. Might be WhatsApp messages, might be Instagram messages, might be letters in the post, just anything. You need a way to reach people. We need something for people to see you. You reach out or they find you through another channel, whatever that channel is. They need to be able to see what you represent. And so is that a LinkedIn page? Is it a website page? They need to see what's on offer. They need clarity over what that is. When they look at you, do they understand what they're getting? They need to be able to progress from there into the point where they engage with you. There needs to be some sort of process. It could be Earls where there's one meeting tops before a proposal stage. It could be something much longer and more drawn out, but there needs to be some sort of process in place. They need to be able to pay. And then for the people that drop out the system, we need to keep engaged with them. Okay, so that's very basics. Next slide, please, Shah. There's obviously a lot more detail, and I think it's worthwhile. We won't labor over this, but it's worthwhile going through an exercise, understanding, say, the model that we put at the beginning, the process map there of what do we have in each different part of the business, right? And so do we have the channels that we need? Do we have the database that we need? Do we have the process to nurture people and just start to understand what it is that's going on in our own business? We've actually just started using these past couple of months a self-assessment tool, which is a questionnaire. Starts off with about 25 questions and then gives you an assessment of where things are. So if anybody's interested in it, we can send you that. And then if anybody want to have an hour session after it, I'm more than happy to chat. But yeah,
And I might just add that
there's
go ahead, Will. Sorry, finish the thought.
It essentially comes around this, right? It's a self-audit of looking to see what's there and understanding what we're working with and maybe where the gaps are. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna say that there's a lot here, right? And I think this goes to show that there are a lot of things to consider in terms of your outbound methodology. And there's probably a whole bunch here that you thought about and didn't choose to go with. And there's probably a lot here you're like, we've never really thought about doing that. And I'm sure a lot of you wish that we could go through each one of these in detail this morning or today, depending on where you are, but we're not going to do that. But these are just, again, the whole point about this is to give you some more things to think about so you can start thinking about how to improve your sales process and your outbound.
Next slide, please, Shah. Perfect. So we talked about this earlier. We can skip on, but it's worth looking at the numbers to say, right, what are the metrics that's coming through? How many first meetings do I need to get to a close? And is that something that seems reasonable in the industry I'm in? And you guys will know that better than anybody else, right? And is there a way to get to the point where we convert a higher proportion of our first meetings through to closure? Because everything within here takes up a lot of time, and our time is precious. We're all busy.
Okay, and I might add here, Will, that most organizations probably don't know these metrics, right? So this is something to start thinking about, is that what does this look like?
Well, I'm interested for everybody that's here. Do you know how many first meetings you have that would get you through to a close? Is that a number that you're immediately familiar with?
So in the chat, do you know what these metrics are to go from each stage of your sales process? It could be a good chance for 30 seconds of interactivity. So we're going to monitor the chat and we want to see just a whole bunch of stuff in there. Not yet. Tina, come on, Tina. Do we have to talk about this?
Not there yet.
I know, Tina.
Basic 20%. Hey, look, that's good, Renee. Yeah.
Hi, Tina. Not there yet.
Once we get to discovery. Yeah, okay, right. That's interesting. Yeah. Really interesting. And so I'm just going
to reinforce here, folks. This is just something for you guys to think about because in my experience, most organizations don't. 5.5 for some special reps, not all.
And it's a good, Jamie, it's a good point. It changes between reps, so Fraser's conversion rate is between first meetings to closure is better than mine. It closes more, right? From first meeting, it's about 8 to closure, and mine was 12 and a half last year. But then equally, we're getting different sorts of leads. He has a high proportion of referrals, and mine comes more from other places. And so it all counts, right? And it's all worth looking at. So
I'm just
I think
going to add
worth
something
looking
here really quickly.
on
Well,
a
from a
per rep
sports
basis.
perspective, I think I'm a guy that watches some hockey here. Go Jets, go! And you think about analytics, right? Organizations are driven to win, which is what we're doing as organizations. We want to win more revenue, and think about the analytics that sports teams manage and how they use that to determine how they're going to improve their power play, how they're going to change their penalty kill, how they're going to improve their zone entries. So if sports teams are keeping these kind of analytics that you're seeing here and using it to inform, lineups and how what they practice, then I think there's a pretty good indication that organizations, if we want to improve our performance levels, that these kind of analytics are really important for us. Okay, I'm off my
Next,
soapbox now. We can carry on.
next slide, please. So the final part of this section, before we go to scaling, are we ready to scaling? Just are we ready to scale? So just some questions we can ask ourselves, right? So it's a bit of a summary. What channels could I increase the volume of right now if I had more capacity? And then if I doubled the leads, would my process convert them, or if I just doubled the chaos, right? And so that is different for each channel. And our capacity to increase the volume of each channel is different. So we just need to include that and be realistic during the plan. Something I've talked about before that I think is true. I'd be keen on other people's opinion on it. If you're adding a new channel, it takes a while to get good at it. And, I think we need to be realistic about what we're going to do with new channels. So is it worthwhile us trying to double the outputs and maybe the inputs to hopefully get the output from an existing channel, or starting a new one? And I think it's useful just to be realistic with ourselves about what we're doing there. Next part, have I fixed the most common leakage points? Again, it's essentially just a summary of the map and where things are falling out. Do my salespeople have a consistent, documented sales process? Is everybody doing it the same way? Is everybody doing it differently? I think the bigger the team, the more important that is. The more people you have coming in, that they have consistent training, that you have a way to reflect on that. And we'll touch on how we do this in a second when we're doing the AI tools. CRM cleanliness, I think that's particularly important with the nurture side of things and the ICP side of things. Am I going after the right people? And then am I keeping track of the right people in a useful way that's manageable? And again, the bigger the team, the tidiness of that CRM
Well,
or
I just want to add a question
database
here.
use is
I'm also
important.
curious, is everybody using a CRM of some sort? So listen, I've dealt with some pretty decent sized customers that don't have a CRM. Never mind is the data clean, right?
Yes, if you put in the comments, that's very interesting. Are people using spreadsheets or a CRM? We see
And
a real mix. Probably
and
50% of the companies I talk
what CRM are you using? Renee,
to,
so
CRM,
CRM.
HubSpot,
Simpson, yeah. Michael, I'm using HubSpot too. I guess that's a holdover from your North Forge days. Yeah.
Dynamics, Attio, CRM, Salesforce.
Attio, Dynamics. Yeah.
Predominantly CRM
Zoho,
there.
spreadsheets. Okay. Yeah. There we go. I knew someone had a spreadsheet in here for sure.
Back to spreadsheets.
CRM
That's
spreadsheets,
us.
back to spreadsheets. Danielle, thanks for sharing.
That's that's us. We've gone spreadsheets to HubSpot, back to spreadsheets, and then now I'll show you in a minute what we're doing at the moment. CRM, no choice, sweet CRM. Super interesting, super interesting. And so then,
Thanks, guys.
the cleanliness of that, I think really gets in the way. Most recent client we brought on last week, they've got 14,000 contacts in their CRM, and I said, okay, right, how can we order this and kind of look at who we can immediately reach out to that hasn't been spoken to in a while. And that was a month ago, and we've been talking about it for a month, and they've just said, we actually can't give you anything useful out of those 14,000 contacts. And, and that's a shame, right? There's effort that's gone into it. And obviously there's some value in there that we now can't capture because it's a mess, right? It's a very normal problem, right? I think it's very, very common. Do I have a clear ICP? Are we going after the right people? And then who is owning all of this, right? Everybody's got different responsibilities. It's a chaotic process, a problem to deal with, and who is it that's taking responsibility over it? Any final thoughts on that, Scott, before we change to the next section?
No, I think the bottom line out of this, and there's a ton of good points here, is just the fact that I think many times organizations are looking for a silver bullet or a quick fix. And now it's like, oh, AI is going to be the quick fix. But as I've learned and as Will is pointing out here, if you don't have those basics and the fundamentals, and that's a sales process, and that's an ICP, and that's a CRM, you can't scale that until you get that part of it right. So there's no silver bullet. This takes a lot of hard work, and a lot of the work is around those basics and those fundamentals. So I said I had nothing to add, and then I talked for 30 seconds. So there you go. Sorry.
Next
Thanks for being
section,
so
please.
supportive, Tina. Appreciate it.
Okay, so because it's 2026, we have to talk about AI. Just thought we'd share exactly what we're using at the moment, and this will be different for every company. And not to say we're the best at it by any stretch, but we've been doing some really useful things for us recently, and so I thought I'd share a bit of that. First bit, meeting capture and note taking. I mean, we've had recorders for 2 or 3 years, Fathom and Note AI and these different bits and pieces. Honestly, until recently, I just didn't get that much use out of it personally. What we were using initially was giving that recording to the team and saying, "Hey, you weren't in the meeting. Now go through this, and you can listen back to certain bits." Or if Fraser's in a meeting or Scott's in a meeting, to say, "Hey, Will needs to listen to this. He can listen at minute 12." And go back and listen. And that was good. But when I was looking at either my own sales meetings or the team's sales meetings to see how they're getting on, you'd listen to the whole thing and it's very time consuming. And I honestly just wouldn't do it very much. I couldn't find the time. Now, training Claude with the right prompts that we keep updating and improving with the transcript to go through it, we've got huge amounts of value out of that, of analyzing that against our sales process, picking up next tasks, catching things that are not necessary, putting them into our proposals, and some of that comes up now. So I think what we're able to do now with meeting recordings versus a year ago, I think has been a huge improvement. So next slide, please. Content creation. I don't know why we got that image of me there. Not the best
Yeah, I
one.
was going to say, Will, I don't remember approving that image in the presentation. What is all that about?
I didn't pick it, but there we go.
I bet you Sharha added it in, right?
I think I personally, I struggle creating content. I find it very draining. And I'm not comfortable putting stuff out that has been written by AI, but it's been massively helpful in terms of creating a structure, creating ideas, me putting ideas in, they come back with a bit more flesh, and then putting it back in again and comes back with more flesh. And I found that really, really helpful. And delegating bits of content creation to other people to then bring it back to you, right? And so that has definitely helped massively. Finding a middle ground over what I'm happy being my representation out there when some of it's been made by AI. I definitely feel like I still need to stay in the process very much. And I think that will stay the same, but it's helped me increase my output massively. And for some people, I know, it's 100% of what they get out there. So I think it's definitely useful.
And I'm just going to add this. This is a great point. As for anyone who knows me, I post on a regular basis, and to Will's point, I use ChatGPT, and I don't know how many people have done this, but I've named mine Sparky. You have to have a name if you're going to form a bond with your chat. And I run a lot of the ideas through there. But then, as Will said, then I make it my own. And there are times like, hey, I need a newsletter idea, and it'll give me a bunch of topics. So I think within this whole notion of content creation for LinkedIn, I fully support what 1000 Steps is doing and what Will's talking about leveraging AI to help you with that, because there's a lot of really great methodologies out there. Jarvis, yeah, okay. You're obviously a Marvel nerd then, aren't you?
Next slide, please. So these two come together really, the proposal creation and then the onboarding creation, just different. Claude trained in different ways, but starting from all of the notes I make during the sales meetings, including the recordings with it, and then training Claude based off all the different proposals we made before, all of the content that we've put online. So we've got a paid account on Claude, which means that you can create projects in there, and I'm sure the AI tools are the same. And so it's learned off all of the content that we've created, or maybe 50 plus different pieces, articles that we've written, put 5-10 different proposals within there, then put all the information from the sales process that I've written or Fraser's written or Richard's written, and then put all the recordings from the meetings in as well, and then have a conversation with the AI to say,
this is what we would like from this. What do you need to ask us, and what extra elements would you add in to come from it? And what's come from that has been a proposal process that's gone from maybe 3 hours 18 months ago to a year ago, when I was using it in a much more basic way, still took about an hour, now to about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, 10 minutes putting it all in, and then 20 minutes going through and just making sure that I feel comfortable with it. And the value add in there has been really, really good. And it's felt pretty genuine. The content, the quality of it's been very good. So that's helped.
Will, can I add something here, Will?
Yes.
I think what I'm going to agree with Will once again is that it's a great way to reduce your time. And the caution, as the bottom part says here, is we've all received an email or a LinkedIn reach out or a proposal that you can tell was written by AI. And there's the part I think we need to be really careful of, because AI helps us do our jobs better, but this is still a very human, um, like sales and marketing and revenue generation is all relationships, and it's all very human. And AI can help us, but we need to make sure that we're the intermediary in there. So Will's comment about checking it over before it goes out is really, really important, because I think when we see stuff that we know was written by AI and it doesn't seem human anymore, it tends to be off-putting. So fantastic
Whichever
tool, but make sure that we're managing it, right?
whichever big four it was that did the contract for the consulting work for the Australian government for 400 grand and just gave an AI document they hadn't read over, it is unacceptable, really. To provide something that a client's paying for with obvious, that shows that you haven't put the time and care into it, I think is is a big red flag, and it's not what not the relationship you want to be building with a client. Right?
And David makes a great
Next slide,
point.
please.
David makes a great point, and I want to say that I haven't met him yet, but he seems like a super awesome guy and a good judge of character. So thanks for that comment, David.
Next slide. So this is similar, but actually the value add we got from here has been even more than the proposals. So we went through our onboarding process, but the back and forth with Claude, and it was ChatGPT about 3 months ago, from here, of it then helping make a plan for the first 3 months with a client, it gave us a lot more than we were expecting. So the process of it was very similar, same as making the proposals, but we got a lot more out of the onboarding side of things. We had a process already that we were happy with, and we thought it was good. This brought up a whole bunch of activities, essentially, to make sure that you're pushing things forward across the board. You're not just LinkedIn and email and bits and pieces in the database, but suddenly it's building out much more of a content plan and an events plan, all these bits and pieces together. So this was really, really useful and saved a huge amount of time. Also gave us something to give to the client in terms of an onboarding plan, which we hadn't had before. It was something that we were just talking through and they were seeing week to week. Next slide, please. Task tracking. Yeah, so part of this has come from the recordings in the meetings. So say somebody's not there, if one of our EAs or the BD member attached to a client is not there. The other side of it has been the output back from Claude to say, are you on top of your tasks, right? And so this leads nicely into the CRM section, which is next. But if one of our BD persons supporting a client or one of our EAs is supporting us, there's tasks across the spectrum that need to be talked about every week. So are you going to the right number of networking events? Those booked in for the following week. Where are you with your content? Is it with the content team, or do you need to approve it, or do you need to write something yourself? Is there a newsletter going out? All these bits and pieces. It's really helped the EAs and us make sure that things aren't tracked, and helped us prioritize. And so it goes back and forth in and out of the system every day. There's a different instruction for morning, afternoon, and evening. And it's been awesome. So we've been using this maybe 2 to 3 months. And so this bit and the next bit, which is the CRM side of it, started with a bunch of instructions, an SOP saying this is what the BD people need to do, and this is what our EAs need to do. These are the sheets that they use, and these are the typical tasks. And then the feedback from that um, uh, has been surprisingly important in terms of making sure that things are on track, but more importantly, the prioritization of different tasks. Because once it gets over a few weeks, there's usually projects in the background that are happening that start to fall behind, and it's been really useful. Then when there's a changeover of personnel as well, there's been a much easier transition for them to take over whatever tasks are there.
I think the prioritization piece is really critical, right? Because we always have lots to do, but how do you prioritize? So I think that's an especially salient point.
And then just actually skip on 2 slides, please, Shah. So this task creation for the EAs and then to the CRM. So we've just started using this at the same time. And essentially, it's getting feedback from Claude to say, these are the follow-ups that you haven't done. It's essentially the feedback that we've been wanting from a CRM for years. And it's probably built into proper CRM tools now, but we use spreadsheets to say, these are follow-ups that need to happen now. You've got these people that need nurturing and nothing's happened this month. And so it started with a bunch of instructions in terms of what we want to do. So how often follow-ups should occur, how we want to nurture and how regularly we want to be in touch and the different methods that we can do to stay in touch. And then getting the spreadsheets into the format that the AI can read, and then it then giving us the feedback. So quite similar to the EA task, but specifically around the CRM. And if you just go back 1 slide, please. So then, yeah, the final bit on this is essentially reviewing our sales meetings. And so, as I said before, we would find time to, we would struggle to find time to review our sales meetings by listening to them. But we've built instructions and a reviewing protocol into Fathom, into Claude, to look at everybody's first meetings, their discovery calls, and get an assessment from there. It's taken quite a few back and forths because it was initially focusing on the wrong things. It was saying you failed because you spent 2 minutes rather than 1 minute on this particular area. And so those things need adjusting, but it was very easy. It's been very helpful now to compare what I'm doing to Fraser, to Scott, to Richard, to Carter, to whoever. And it's useful then to kind of, you have more visibility on what other people are doing. You can learn from what they're doing. And personally, I found it really, really helpful. Any final thoughts, Scott, before the final slide?
On the sales meeting thing, what's really important is that the word coaching comes up there in a couple of the bullets. And if there's one thing, well, there's a whole bunch of things, but if I was to come up with a top 10 list, one of them is coaching. And leveraging, first of all, just do it. Second of all, if you can leverage AI to help you with that. But coaching is one of the most impactful things sales leaders can do to move the needle with their reps, to move things forward. And when you hear me move the needle, yes, I am referring to Mike Weinberg over my shoulder there. So coaching, 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 and if AI helps you do a better job of it, then by all means implement AI as part of your coaching strategy. But coach first. Do it.
Awesome.
That's my comment.
Just skip through to the final slide, please, Shah. This is not a long section. It's just about who owns the change. I think from our experience, I think next slide, please. From our experience, the organization of it needs to come from the management and
yep.
Essentially the accountability, but it needs the input of the sales and marketing team, of course. But they're busy. They've got things to do, and they're also not looking at the same statistics. They don't have the same priorities as management, right? So, like with any other organizational change, it needs to be driven from the top and have involvement from everybody. It shouldn't just be left to the sales director. I think it's bigger than that. Okay, that's the final bit. So my closing thoughts essentially are just that we need to understand what's going on in the business first to work out whether that fits into the plan that we're making. There's some useful metrics to find else within that to see whether things are reasonable, but just getting a sense of what we've got so that we can work out where we're going, and then you could prepare for the scaling, whether that's using AI or not. Any final thoughts, Scott?
I'll be brief. Sorry, guys. I know I keep saying I'll be brief. There's when Will and I reviewed this, we realized there's a lot of really good content in here, and I think if nothing else is it this notion of, take the time, slow down, step back, look at your sales process, look at your lead generation, look what you're doing as far as, LinkedIn and other outreach tools. really assess your ability around those fundamentals and around those basics. That to me is a really important step. And if we're able to help with that process, great. Sorry, process. I've worked with lots of folks in the US, so I have to say process or process, otherwise they make fun of you. So process being very Canadian and very British, but just spend some time evaluating, assessing, and figuring out how you can do a better job, continually doing a better job of your sales process. The results are there. It's not something you can solve with brute force, but it is something that you're more likely to solve by just being analytical and making the time to review it. So hopefully this gave you some food for thought, some things to think about. And if you have questions and this resonated with you, we'd love to have a conversation.
Perfect,
Okay,
guys.
we're 10.
Anyone
We're
wants to stick
10:02.
around
Yeah.
and chat, you're good. But everyone, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sure you got other things
Thanks,
to go
guys.
to.
Appreciate it.
Genuinely glad to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Be well.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.